chat at the moment, and it's still not live on YouTube. So do you want to just come on for a moment and just let us know where the hitch is and what we need to be doing differently?
You should be live now.
Do you have YouTube open and is it showing it live?
Yep.
Right. So at the moment, and it's still not. We are rolling. Okay, I've got it. Okay, we've got everyone on here as well. We have got, first of all, John Brda, who was the first person that I was actually having an interview with when we started this journey back in January. So, John, good to have you here.
Hey, Roger, how you doing?
Very, very good. I know we've got some updates on MMTLP, so it's been a busy month. We've also got on here Wes Christian, who was the second person that I had to speak with. I shared anything about because he was speaking with our investors right back at the beginning of January with the first findings that he found. So Wes, good to have you here as well.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And then we also have got here Frank Benedetto. Frank, I think the first time we spoke was just a few weeks ago, and that's when you connect me both with Greg at Cosmos and also Dan at Clean Vision. So good to have you here as well.
Pleasure.
Awesome. And finally, we have Greg, because Dan just had an emergency last minute with his family, and so had to just jump out. But I know that Frank has a lot he can be sharing about what's been happening there with Clean Vision. But we have Greg, who's right now in Greece, and Greg leads Cosmos Health. So Greg, good to have you here too.
Yeah. Thank you, Roger, for the invitation. And we are here to discuss all
yeah,
this.
Absolutely. And what I would say as we go through this is that you'll notice that this is the first roundtable we're having where we're actually not even having anyone to be effectively like our moderator. We decided we're going to just do this as a pretty raw conversation about where things are a month down the line from where we started. I'm going to give everyone a chance just to give a quick update on some of the biggest things that have been happening through this month, because it's been a tumultuous month. We are right in this battle right now, and we have all been managing different strategies that we've been following as we've been going forward. Wes, I'd love to start with you, because you're obviously representing many different companies in this battle right now, and for you to just share what you're seeing from your side in terms of the main things that have been shifting in the landscape over the last month.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Roger. So as many people know, I've been in this litigation space, let's call it, for 21 years. I've never seen this much activity, both from the investor community, both from the enforcement arms of various governments, whether it's SEC, whether it's FINRA, whatever, and certainly the Reddit, Wall Street Bets, Superstock crowd, and then add to that also Congress. Ultimately, this group of legislators, I think, is really taking a hard look at this, and I'll let John Brda, my friend and client, elaborate on that more. So we can, I don't want to steal his thunder on that, but there is a multifaceted group of people that have now pushed this issue to the forefront. And frankly, gentlemen, that includes each of you as CEOs and representatives of your company. Never in the 21-year history of this litigation has a group of CEOs banded together to form a consolidated group whereby you can share information, share concepts, see what's working, see what's not working to protect your companies, your shareholders, your technology, and of course, your stock price. So that's an important feature, because in order to take this on, it's got to be organized. It's got to ultimately become large enough for people to pay attention to it. And by virtue of the consolidation of the CEOs in this space, and by virtue of all the other agencies and others paying attention to this, then we increase the probability, gentlemen, that something is actually going to get done about this. Because separate and apart from recovering damages for every company and every shareholder, I submit to you that everybody on this call and everybody that's been litigating this for 21 years, which is a large group of law firms, don't forget, it isn't just me. I've got, Alan Pollack and a whole group of professionals and other lawyers, Cohen Milstein and others that are helping us litigate in this space. And I'll tell you that group of lawyers and experts is growing. There's going to be more lawsuits forthcoming. you know, in the very not too distant future, whether those are class actions or whether those are just straight up lawsuits, that's to be determined. But I will tell you that there are others coming, and that includes by lawyers other than just our group, which I'm happy for them to join the fight, because ultimately that's what's going to facilitate change. Okay. So besides the damages we're seeking to be compensated for, all of us, everybody on this call and everybody in this space is looking for change. We can no longer allow this carnage to go on. We can no longer allow this theft. It's really stealing at an enormous level that's happening in this space. And so I believe the best chance we've had in 21 years to facilitate change and to put all of this under a microscope and get the rules changed, get the perspective of the regulators changed is now. So, you know, thank you, all of you, for having the courage to step up, because it's not an easy journey, as we all know. And ultimately, if you look at what's happening, including the most recent case we just filed on behalf of Genius with Rogers Company and others that are coming, you're going to see more light be shed on what I would consider illegal activity.
Thanks, Wes. We're going to actually break up this conversation into a number of sections, of which, after we've given everyone a chance to give an update, we're going to start with legals, and then we're going to get on to things like special dividends or you know, record counts, and that's going to be a big chunk. And then there's going to be a chance for some Q&A a little later as well. I'm going to come over to John Brda next, and John, obviously, you know, there was the news that came right off our last you know, conversation roundtable we had of you taking on board with some of the other investors, Wes's company, for MMTLP. We can go into more of the details on the kind of legal developments, but I'd love you to kind of share what you've seen within the community and your own situation with MMTLP over the last 30 days.
Sure. Well, interestingly enough, this March 9th that's coming up rather quickly next week will be 90 days since the halt, the U3 halt by FINRA. And so that's everyone on Twitter is acutely aware of that. Certainly, we'd like some transparency from FINRA and the SEC as to what's being done about this and what do they plan to do about it. They haven't had any transparency whatsoever at this point. And that's very frustrating for investors, some 65,000 plus investors that we had in MMTLP. What's unique about our situation is one of our 4 members of the Flamethrower LLC mentioned in one of the letters that we sent to Congress is that ours is very unique in that we're MMTLP is no longer trading. So everything that happened is frozen in time. We have a unique ability to go back, and if, you know, we get cooperation, actually get all the information that we need to determine what happened, who is responsible, who the bad actors are, and go after them accordingly. So we're frozen in time, kind of like Pompeii. And so it's been a very unique situation, unlike your situation or Cosmos or CLNV, excuse me. You're still trading and you're still, you know, going about your business on a daily basis. So MMTLP stopped trading. It became Next Rich Hydrocarbons. They fulfilled their obligation and gave out the shares, but we still don't know how many shareholders there are. We believe there's a lot more than 165 million shares that were in circulation. And those answers are still out there. Wes and his team have done a great job on the due diligence thus far. There's still a lot more to go. And the interesting thing is there are a number of paths that we can go down. You know, we want to do the best for not only our shareholders, but since the guys at Flamethrower are putting up the money to go after this, we want to have it a great resolution for everybody. And so, unfortunately, these things take time. Again, if FINRA or the SEC came out and gave us, you know, what we're supposed to be doing, it would go a lot quicker. But right now, it's just kind of trudging along, so to speak. And hopefully, we'll get some breaks in that dam here rather quickly, and we can push this forward a lot quicker than we have been.
Yep. And as you said, like, even though, as you say, you know, we've got trading companies, you know, there's a company behind all of this as well, where the board at this point don't know who the shareholders are. So you can't actually be making any shareholder decisions until FINRA actually, you know, basically clears this block and things move forward again as well.
Yeah, that's a big thing. If you kind of do the research, for example, Dole Foods back in 2010, they thought they had a shareholder base of X. And it turns out their shareholder base was Y. And so all of their corporate governance was off. And, you know, the corporate governance in NextBridge, we feel right now is really in jeopardy. And so that's a big problem for them. And it's a big problem for the rightful shareholders as well.
So this is happening in real time. Frank just tweeted today that after the record count for Clean Vision, there was 40 million shares that should not be there, basically 40 million counterfeit shares that have now been recorded. I mean, this is today, right? That this basically comes out. So we are right now in the midst of the fact that one thing leads to another thing, and the fact that we're all seeing this together means it's a very different situation in the past when there was maybe only one or two companies even reporting it, and definitely not with the kind of audience that we're now seeing following this as well. So big thank you to everyone who is supporting and everyone who is spreading the word as well. Frank, I'd love for you just to share from your side, because you've got 3 companies that you're actually invested in and working with that all have got challenges of sorts. And again, just like John, you're coming here more as an investor than as a CEO right now. I'd love for you to just share what you've been seeing over the last 30 days and specifically, you know, in Clean Vision's case, given that Dan's not here right now.
Okay, first let me apologize for Dan. Obviously his wife fell ill and he had to rush her to the hospital. So please accept our apologies on that. As far as Clean Vision goes, we issued this special dividend to show our shareholders how much we appreciated their long support. And we wanted to get a share count at the end of the day. And what we noticed was when the numbers came in after the record date of Monday, that there was a discrepancy on the dividend, that they wanted to issue 2.2 million more dividend shares than were originally expected. So that leads us to believe that there is an overage of 40 plus million shares in the market. So we are expecting the share intel data Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. We will obviously match up both of those numbers. And at that point, we'll be making a decision as to what direction to go to rectify it. But nothing is off the table. We have made a formal complaint to FINRA and we expect an investigation. So we're going to present these numbers to them as well. We will be talking to Wes. We're going to have to share intel data, whatever we have to do to protect the shareholders and do, pretty much we'll run the full gamut. There's nothing that's off the table.
That's great. Thank you very much, Frank. And we're going to come back into some of your experiences with all the different companies and with the investors as well, because this is going to be a big part about what makes share prices go up, go down in the short term, and what happens in the long term as well. Because where we were for sure on our last CEO roundtable was there was a number of shares, including ourselves, which were going up pretty dramatically. And in the last month, we've all been having hits where we've seen 20% minus days. We've seen, like you're seeing right now, Clean Vision today, a 20% plus day, right? So basically, there is a huge amount of volatility that's taking place. And how investors should be thinking about that as well. So we're going to come back to that. We're going to come over finally to Greg in Greece. I'm right now in Poland, in Europe. I was in New York and in California last week. So good to be back in Europe. And just so everyone knows, in the same way that with Clean Vision, they have taken on Share Intel, and now obviously also speaking with Wes, with Cosmos, I know it was like, way back in time, back in December, about the same time we took on Share Intel, that you also took on Share Intel, and then hired Wes in January. Dual listing on upstream is all happening at the moment as well. Would love for you to share, Greg, from your position, what you've been seeing with all of the activity that's been taking place and what Cosmos has been doing over the last month.
Okay, I give you a little bit update about the development that we have do. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation. I want to say for Cosmos has been proactive in adopting a rigorous shareholder protection plan. Before I explain the actions we have taken, I would like to note that yesterday we have a 1 year anniversary listed company on NASDAQ. Is 1 year, 28 February, it was 2022. Cosmos is now much stronger with healthy cash position, minimal debt, strong organic growth. Our cash position is more than 7 times higher than our long-term debt. and we have an active acquisition pipeline. We are focused on generating value for our shareholder and look forward to update them on our progress. Regarding our shareholder protections plan and actions against the trading regulatory risks, we have implemented a multi-dimensional approach. First, we retain share intel to review the trading patterns of our common stock to assess any potential naked short selling and stock manipulation. After review the trading data, we conclude that there is a merit in purchase this matter further. Second, to develop a strategy and explore all available options to protect the interest of our shareholders, we retained the service of Wes Christian of Christian Levin Law Group and Alan Pollack, two premier law firms with a strong focus on naked short selling and stock manipulation. Third, we also announced a share repurchase program to reflect the confidence that we have in our company operating fundamentals and growth prospects, which we believe is not reflected in the current market valuation. And finally, we began the application process to dual listing our shares on Upstream, which will attract new investors and increase the liquidity of our stock, among other things. We will consider various options, including a digital dividend or coupons. We are committed to protecting our shareholders, and we will pursue all available options, including new initiatives to maximize shareholder value. Wes, our lawyer, may also provide further details regarding the next steps and offer any additional thoughts if he wishes, either now or later on during today's roundtable. That is one quick update from development that.
That's great, Greg. You've been busy. Okay, that's really good. And you know, this is going to be, I think, a very, very interesting and timely conversation we're having, because we're all juggling, you know, a long-term plan here versus short-term, day-by-day shareholder expectations, right? And how do we communicate in an effective way going forward as well? I've learned a lot about that myself. Quick update for everyone on Genius. A lot has happened in 1 month. We basically were only a month ago launching our illegal trading task force. That's when people started noticing what we were up to. And we have now committed to basically daily updates, which I've been doing pretty much every day. I haven't missed a single day, including weekends, using Twitter as the main place. And then at the same time, doing monthly investor calls. Our investor call we did in February basically had 7,000 people watch that call. It's a live stream, and we're going to do the same on the 15th of March, which is our claim date for our NFT. We did the whole process on the coupons. We did the whole process on basically making sure that we had a way to do a share count with our spin-off of Entrepreneur Thoughts. All of that's in process right now as well. And on top of all of that, we basically have got this legal case, which we just filed this week as well. And we've seen our share price go up 20% one day, down 20% another day. We have had a mix of people supporting us, people hating us. It's like, it's been wild, right? And as all this isn't happening, we're looking at the ongoing focus of the future. We're running a business here. And so the number of conversations we've been having in terms of launching new products, what we've been doing in terms of making sure the business is continuing to grow, very similar to what you said, Greg, that's all been part of this as well, right? And so people only really see the tip of the iceberg, what's showing up above the water surface. And every one of those news cycles is so critical as well. We also committed to having at least 2 press releases a week. I still remember when I did the IPO and I asked how often are we meant to be sharing? And they said, well, maybe 1, maybe 2 press releases a month. So we're at a whole different news cycle in terms of what we're sharing out there. And we're still a small company looking to grow a lot bigger as well. So with that being kind of just a nutshell of what's been happening, I would love to really zoom into one area, which is how crazy does a CEO need to be even thinking they can even fight this, you know, through the legal system? And how long does it take for that to happen? What have we learned about that over the last month? Especially because usually investors do not like to see companies get into litigation, right? And we can see that that's been very much the case of us when we've been out there saying, look, we're going to litigate this. I'm going to start with John, and I want to say one thing. If anyone's missed the video of John, it's on this channel. You can subscribe to the channel. You can go find that video of me and John, where John shared how he went from 30 cents to a couple of years ago when he was running Torchlight, how it ran all the way through. February basically was a big month when he suddenly had all of these naked short sellers looking to cover, or at least basically like buy shares from the company. How that led 6 months later to basically the Meta merger. And then it was another like 6 months or 5 months before the spinoff and the special dividend and what we're seeing with the halt. The reason I'm sharing that is because we looked at all of this as at least a 1-year journey for us to follow a similar arc. We just happened to accelerate a lot faster than we expected within a couple of weeks, and now settling back down again. But I would love for you, John, just to share anything you can share, because do realize for everyone, there's a lot we can't share because we are in litigation at the moment. But just from anything that you feel comfortable sharing for everyone on the process once you brought Wes on board, and what you're basically able to share for anyone from MMTLP who want to hear the latest at the moment.
Sure. So there are several facets that I can talk about. First of all, Wes and his team have been doing a great job. We've had several meetings with them in person. We have communications 3 or 4 times a week on different aspects. Many different paths we can go down, from historically based information from what happened when I was the CEO of Torchlight and all the chicanery that was going on at that particular junction, all the trading over in Europe, all of these things that happened to us and all the naked shorting at that particular juncture leading up to the merger of with Meta Materials was very interesting. And then, 4 months later, MMTLP happens. And so that was a whole new avenue for us to go down. But for us, the biggest thing that the biggest improvement we've seen since the halt is that our shareholder base in MMTLP is massive and loud. They're very loud on Twitter, and they're very loud in front of Congress, and they are just belligerent, which is fantastic because this is a squeaky wheel type of setup. So now that, I think we were kind of one of the leaders in getting out in front of this, now that everyone else is kind of jumping on board, everyone is acutely aware of this in Congress. And so we have letter writing campaigns. We have interviews with congressmen and congresswomen. We've sent them information that they can use when they're speaking to different 3-letter agencies and things of that nature. So we believe that aspect of it is really very positive for us at this particular juncture, because everything is so secretive. The broker dealers don't have to give you anything. The market makers don't have to give you anything. DTCC doesn't have to give you anything. FINRA gives you nothing. SEC gives you nothing. And so the only way for us to get to the bottom of this from one side of the equation is through Congress. And we're doing everything we can with those people to help them. The other side of that is if we get to a certain level with Wes and his crew where we can identify the best path forward from either a class action or a direct lawsuit against certain perpetrators, we will pursue that as well. So this has many, many different tangents for us, and it's a very complicated matter. But the good news is we're not going anywhere, and neither are the MMTLP shareholders. And if you probably followed us on Twitter at all, they're massive, and they're I think Wes actually and I both had separate meetings with a whole group of people that are, I want to call them internet sleuths, that just spend days and hours and weeks investigating every and all paths that have happened in this case. And some of the information they're uncovering is just mind-blowing. Now, whether or not it's going to help us in a case, a legal matter, or help Congress, get to the bottom of it. But really the frustrating part for me is if I'm an investor in the U.S. market and we've uncovered all these problems, my goodness, it's very difficult for me to pull up E-Trade and invest knowing that all this stuff is going on in the U.S. capital markets without it being solved, without it being fixed. So this has a much larger meaning for all of us combined than just our own particular stories. And I think all working together can make a difference, quite frankly.
So I was trying to get a lid off a peanut butter can the other day, and I was doing a mix of basically kind of tapping it with a knife, and then I was basically banging it on the table, and then I was like putting it in the microwave to basically heat up a little bit to get the plastic cap off. And basically there was a multiple number of different things I did, which finally popped the lid, right? And I think a lot of people, when they hear about something like, okay, we're going to take a legal route, are thinking that's the one binary way. Whereas we know, like in the conversation we've been having, we're saying, look, it could be the actual investors that actually bring the pressure to Congress or SEC. It could be what we do when they see all of this noise happening that makes someone at Congress actually make a decision. It could be just like what happened with Bernie Madoff, where after SEC was warned multiple times about the Madoff fraud, it was actually the FBI who actually came in and actually arrested him at the end of the day. So which is going to be the piece that cracks is a really interesting part, because you can never predict, but you've got to come from different angles. And the retail investors are part of this as well. Do you want to share just your view as to what you're seeing? Because I'm going to come to Wes in a moment as well, in terms of one of the areas that people think is most likely, which is that Congress is going to, or at least some parts of Congress is going to pick up and say, okay, well, we have oversight over SEC. We can basically start taking actions around that. And whether you're more hopeful that that could be happening now than several months ago.
So I'm very hopeful because I know it's happening. So not only through us, but also several other shareholders have given me information about their Congress people that they've contacted and communicated. And I will tell you that one of the point people we're working with in Congress has told us everybody's talking about it. This is not something that is quiet anymore on Capitol Hill, which is fantastic. Which, you know, that doesn't mean we stop. That means we continue the pressure and make sure this is known, because there, you know, what happens in Congress is there's always somebody competing for their time and their effort, and we've got to make sure this stays at the forefront of what they're doing. So that's very, very important for us, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick one in terms of, again, staying on the legal theme for a moment. Obviously, a lot of people have seen us go out with our lawsuit this week as well. I've got some interviews that are going to be coming up, which is specifically around the role of toxic debt or death spiral financing when it comes to naked shorting, how this is interrelated. And frankly, it's not just about convertible debts. It's also about warrants. It's about what it is that unwittingly, you know, companies, CEOs have been picking up on in the past. And we're going to actually also be talking about our legal team, how that's evolving as well, because there's different people with different speciality, in the same way that Wes has a speciality focusing at the dealer brokers and really getting to the challenges in the market through one direction. There's others that have come from another direction. And what I found very interesting, two things I want to share. The first one is so everyone is aware, because I think if you haven't read the full complaint that we sent, you could assume that there are a lot of shares out there that are at risk for Genius. Just to be very clear, what we are doing is looking to defend Genius. So when you see a number like 49 million shares that are looking to be claimed, none of those have actually been given out, right? It's not like, you know, someone's gone and flooded the market with anything right now. We're looking to protect the shareholders and make sure that basically we are doing the right thing by the shareholders as much as we can through the legal process, while at the same time, we also have been doing a lot of research as to what the SEC has been doing when it comes to lenders that may be in a similar situation to us, where basically you take on a debt and then you see your share price plummet. And what we have seen is that the SEC has actually taken action successfully over a number of lenders. From what I can see, you know, more lenders or more toxic lenders than they have even broker dealers for naked shorting or the funds, other than the ones that Wes has gone after. So the reason this is very interesting is that can be another pathway that could really support and help. And we're learning all of this all the time as to what's the right way to get in, if it's the legal system we need to follow, given that we know that SEC and FINRA and DTCC will only take certain actions, right? And there's got to be a way through, which is what we're looking for. Wes, I'd love for you to share from your side, your perspective, both from what you heard from John in terms of Congress and what could be happening there, and any other insights that you're getting with the number of CEOs you're now working with on multiple different fronts.
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. Well, first, I concur with John's perspective with Congress. I'm not going to divulge names or stuff that we've discussed in detail, but I can tell you at the 20,000 foot level, there are thousands and thousands of communications that have been sent to Congress from shareholders, and in particular the MMTLP shareholders, demanding that this be looked at. And what they want them to look at is, when I purchase a share, please see that it's delivered to me timely. Okay, it's kind of a simple concept. Otherwise, you're stealing from me. Okay, and what happens when you get that many individual citizens involved in that undertaking, then every congressperson that is in that district has to pay attention to it. And so John's accurate. It's very broad-based, the MMTLP situation. So what I would tell all the CEOs out there today, including all of us on this call, and I know you already know it, but I'm going to reinforce it, get your shareholders involved. I have to tell you, and I think John would agree with me, that the conversations that we've had with the MMTLP shareholders have been incredible. And when he says sleuths, these are people that stay up all night researching things, and not just researching it, documenting it, putting it together. And that so helps this cause. I'll tell you why, guys in the listening audience, because we're taking on the cabal here. We've been taking on the cabal, whoever that is, for decades. And so ultimately, it's a very large ship that has to be redirected, okay? The ship of bad guys. And ultimately, that takes a movement. And so I'm going to submit to you that every CEO needs to do what Roger's talking about, and that is get the information out there, encourage them to become sleuths themselves, share the information and let them be on the ground working for you. Because the other issue here is this is enormously expensive to prosecute, because ultimately, if you look at this, it's not only about selling it, clearing it, stock lending issues, it's about option markets, it's about shares being lent more than once and tracking that. It's about foreign exchanges. It's about how fails are hidden. It's about X-clearing. It's about dark pools. It's about direct market asset access machines, from Canada and other places. It's about, are there dead bodies in London or Canada or Hong Kong and other places concerning this, in Germany, which is of keen interest. The magnitude of the trading coming out of Germany, which I saw early on in this litigation space, has been reinvigorated somehow, and including maybe the Depository Trust Corporation's participation in that potentially, and others. So what does all that mean? I don't know, but we've got a team investigating that, and I think it's noteworthy to the audience to know this. There are several very large firms, and it's been publicly announced, that are going out to their German offices, because these are firms that have, thousands of lawyers and that represent very large companies, that are saying, hey, we think this is happening to us. So we want our German colleagues in these law firms to investigate why in the hell are these trades coming out of Germany that appear to be naked shorts. And so that's now being investigated. So it's not just a United States undertaking, gentlemen and listening audience. It is a worldwide undertaking. This impacts everybody in the world. Wherever the bad guys have offices, that's where it's happening. You think they're just doing it in the States? Don't be that naive. So ultimately, looking at all that takes an enormous effort, enormous. Imagine putting all that together. The point being, if you can facilitate your shareholders getting involved and becoming what the MMTLP group has done, which I applaud them enormously for what they've done. And again, they're doing it for free. And then sharing that information with the legal team or the board is enormously valuable. So I think that's a brilliant idea that's really come out of the MMTLP situation. I've seen it before, but never of this magnitude. You saw it in AMC, you saw it in GameStop, and you've seen it in the Reddit crowd. Imagine if we add thousands of shareholders per company to this, what that does to the movement. It does enormous good. So that's something I think that's emerged out of this. So I think Congress is going to be forced to do something on this. That's going to be a longer term solution. More CEOs are going to join, whether it's our legal team or some other legal team. At this point, truly, and I mean this truly, I don't care. Obviously, I think we do the best job because we've been doing it in 22 cases so far. But there's a movement, and the law firms are starting to recognize this is real, and we can do some good and also make some money at this. And those are two important factors to get law firms engaged. And so I think that's happening. You know, in addition, we're finding new ways, as you've touched on, Roger, to look at this from the illegality perspective. Are these convertible debenture holders dealers and requiring additional disclosure and additional documentation and additional transparency? Or are they investment advisors or just lenders? Okay, the SEC and all the other agencies treat those as two different things, and they are clearly two different things. And so ultimately, that avenue and other things that we're looking at, different approaches. And trust me when I tell you, the people on the other side are also looking at new ways they can hide it, they can disguise it, they can legitimize it, etc. So you got to we have to stay ahead of the curve there, because I will tell you, they're represented by very good lawyers, and they're represented by people in those institutions, the principals that are very smart. You know, they don't hire people from Texas A&M where I went. Okay. They hire people from Harvard and wherever, okay? But I'll be happy to take them on in a street fight, just for the record, okay? In any event, at the end of the day, I think it's a concerted effort. We have to, it's changed the playing field. I was reading an article from, I'm not going to mention the law firm, but one of the biggest law firms that typically are on the other side of the V yesterday. And they made a point that it is incumbent on CEOs and boards now to take active forward participation in following their stock, how it's lent, how it's traded, who's involved in it, what's in margin accounts, what's in cash accounts, what's at the transfer agent, and all these issues. You must actively get involved in that and watch it daily, not every month, daily,
right?
Not
Exactly.
hourly. And so it's going to also reinvent the duties that are going to be imposed, which was their point. They're looking at it from the bad guys' side. The board members and the executive officers have a duty now to look at this. Well, no kidding, because of your clients. Okay, so but ultimately they're right. They're right. This changes the playing field. It's no longer I have to have the best technology. I have to raise the right amount of capital. I've got to make sure I don't get cheated in the process. And so inserting those cheating mechanisms or anti-mechanisms in your company is critical. Now, in addition,
Wes, I'm going to jump in right now, just because I want to make sure we get everyone else to be sharing.
Sorry, I have been accused of talking too much, so I apologize.
You're on a roll. It was a good roll, but you're on a roll. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, but I want to come to Frank and John for a moment before I come over to Greg on some of these actions as a CEO. And the reason is I want to go back to what, Wes, you were talking about with the retail investors. And I wanted to share something about my experience on this as well. And I'd love for you guys to chip in terms of how you see anyone watching this right now, how they might look at this movement, right? Because if it is a movement, we've got to figure out a way of how we can work together. When we were down at 32 cents, the only people we had investing in our stock, because many people had never heard about us, were the investors that joined us before even the IPO. We already had 500,000 investors already. They were all in for the long term. And it went down to 32 cents. And they're like, hey, what's going on at the stock price? But they actually weren't selling. And now it's gone all the way up. And it's also been coming down. And they also aren't selling. I'm sure maybe some of them are sold, but all the ones we speak to are all there for the long term because they believe in the company. They believe in what we're doing. They frankly believe in the analysts who basically have given us $10 plus price targets. And so they're here for the long term as well, which obviously is where I am too. And I've said that consistently from day one. When we saw our share price go up ridiculously, once we actually, talked about the illegal trading task force, there was really basically three different types of people, I believe, without having all the evidence right now, that were pushing it up. First of all, there were those naked shorts that were deciding this now was a good time for them to cover and get out and pass the hot potato to somebody else. And that clearly was driving a ridiculous amount of trading, where we're at like 250 million shares traded when we only had a float of just over 10 million. But there was also another group of people who are the ones who go, hey, this is our fight. We want to be a part of this as well. And they were quite openly saying, we're supporting your company because we support your fight. And then they were learning about the company, but only later, right? There was a third group, which is obviously the day traders, the ones who want to kind of come in, make a quick profit, sell once they've made 10%, right? And obviously there's many of those in the market who also follow meme stocks like AMC, GameStop, and they're buying and selling all the time because there's volume there, right? What we saw after we started getting into the long-term fight, what we saw come the last month was, first of all, a dip because those people who were the illegal traders, while we saw and have continued to track and see that happening, what we know back when we actually saw the most manipulation happening to bring our stock down, when we didn't have a lot of buying pressure, is generally with FTDs, like failures to deliver. While you're meant to do it within a couple of days, they kind of give you a grace period where as long as in the next month or 60 days you cover like somewhere along the way, then you kind of won't be kind of slapped on the wrist. And so that's actually what I see a lot of the activity happening. If there are people who actually did naked short back in January, they're basically looking to cover later in February, and they may just naked short again to push the price down further so they can cover at a lower price, right? Especially if the volumes aren't quite as high. So there's still all this illegal manipulation that is pushing the price down only for it to be pushed up again. That's why you have 20% up days, 20% down days. You have a second group of people where definitely a lot of people came in, said, right, I made my money, and then they cashed out, which also pushes prices down. But you have the third group with the ones that want to stick around, but then they become very vocal to say, Roger, what did you do? It went down 10% today. It went down 20% today. Put out some news, do a buyback, do something to help us today, where in fact, for us, the real thing is the long term. And if we're just trying to keep it up every day, we're going to lose that fight because you're going to go down as well as up. And we may go down a lot before we go back up, which I've been really open about as well. But of course, if someone's willing to basically day trade and sell high and buy low, they wouldn't be complaining. If someone's willing to stay for the long term, even though it's painful to see it go down, they know they're not selling right now and they believe in the long term. But that doesn't stop the fact that many people have a huge anxiety when they see a big red day. And then, of course, the CEOs also feel this. And I've seen quite a lot of CEOs kind of almost like abandon Twitter for a while because they were getting so much heat. And I've seen you yourself post about this to say, hey, you've got to have staying power. You're going to be criticized. So obviously there's CEOs who go, hey, I'm not getting into that fight. And then they're missing the opportunity to be part of this. And there's also investors going, is this even the fight for me? Because like I could be losing a lot of money if I decide to sell at the bottom. What would you say in terms of every investor who, not the ones who just want to make a quick buck, but the ones who actually believe in this movement and want to follow through, is the best way for them to be thinking about this, communicating with CEOs, connecting with others from your point of view? Frank, I'm going to come to you first.
Well, let me say that from my standpoint of view is that, I'm the guy out front for 3 different companies. All 3 companies have share intel. They all have similar issues going on. But as someone who communicates heavily with shareholders like you do, Roger, I hear the horror stories every day. People tell me about their family problems and the financial issues this is causing, marriages breaking up, people losing homes. I mean, I hear real war stories out here, and it tears me up. So it got me fired up enough to the point where Greg will tell you that I was hounding him daily. This is back before the summer, that we have to do something. We have to step in, but nobody knew what to do. What do we do? Do we do a buyback? Do we just reverse the stock? What's the best way to go? And little by little, people started stepping out and coming up with ideas. Ham started giving me ideas. And we started saying, hey, if we use enough of these tactics, something along the way is going to stick. Or maybe it's a combination of them or all of them. Whatever it takes, we have to figure out how to protect these people. Because the short sellers don't care. They don't care what happens to retail. People like us that hear it every day, and you hear the stories and you see the pain in their faces. I get a lot of crap on Twitter, Roger. You know that. You get it too. That's not anger. That's people that are hurting, that are lashing out because they've been swindled. When you've been stolen from, yes, you get angry. And especially when you're in constant communication with people, you hear it all the time. So I don't tell anybody how to invest. They have to do that for themselves. But if you believe in what we're doing, the direction we're going in, if you see that this is a problem, obviously with Clean Vision, we proved today that it was a problem. I believe, Roger, that you've seen it as well. Another thing that's great, and nobody mentioned it, and I wanted Wes to comment on it. Yesterday, there was a lawsuit from a company against one of their funders, and they actually tagged it with the RICO statute. Now, historically speaking, that RICO statute has gotten shot down, but for the first time, the appellate court, they held it up, and they're allowing the case to go forward under the RICO provisions, which is a huge monumental victory for us because now it's considered racketeering. So I'd love to hear what Wes has to say about that one.
That's great. That's very good. Well, let's come over to John. John, I love you. You know, as an investor, you have been very active on Twitter as well. What would you say on the same subject in terms of how every retail investor should be thinking about this being a long-term fight and how we should be interacting with each other?
Well, one thing I will say is that over the last couple of years, the markets have been so volatile; it's unbelievable. So some of the back and forth has to be attributed to the overall market in general. Secondly, I think the advent of algos, back 10, 15 years ago, is just starting to gain momentum. Now, in every stock, it's super easy to find out if an algo is in your stock. You just look for 100 over and over every second. You'll know the algo is taken over, and that direction is going to be in that direction until it's not. And so that's an interesting dynamic that's recently happened. It happened in MMTLP the last trading day. I mean, it was just prolific until FINRA changed their corporate action, and then all of a sudden it was 505. And anybody who knows what market makers do, 505 is SOS. I'm in big trouble. I need shares badly. And that was all algos. There must have been 50 of them lined up on the bid that way. So, and then they halted trading. So if you are paying attention to level 2 as an investor, you're going to find out really quickly which direction the stock is going to go, because it's really hard to fight an algo. And so that's one thing that I think really needs to be investigated from an SEC standpoint, because once these guys get a hold of it, it's very tough. But secondly, more to your point, Roger, I think from my standpoint, running an oil and gas company on NASDAQ for a long period of time, we were always told, only talk about the press release, do not interact with your investors. But the last thing you want to do is get into any communication with investors, because the first thing the SEC is going to do is come look at you. Not all the bad actors are going to come look at you. And so, Roger, you were probably the first one I've seen to come out and actually engage with investors in a proactive way. And I think it's had a profound effect, not only in your company, but on your stock as well. And I think that's the right path forward. We all are big boys. We know what's non-public information, and we know what's public information. So as long as you're operating within those boundaries, I think the more communication with your shareholders, the better. They're going to respect you for it, and they're going to be more well informed. So I'm liking that trend for sure.
That's good point, John. And I can see so many CEOs now that are being more vocal, which I think is fantastic. And any CEOs watching this, I really hope that you have the courage to kind of step in there and help the investors, because the investors are watching things daily, right? They're not waiting for the next press release in a month's or 2 months' time. I want to come to Greg for a moment, but a distinction I'd like to make, which I'm really keen to come to Wes on, and those of you who want to comment on this as well, is that I do believe that a lot of the pain that has come with a lot of the stocks that retail investors have been following have been largely driven by the fact that there are certain stocks, the most well-known stocks, AMC, GameStop, Bed Bath & Beyond, they became targets of short sellers because they were on the bankruptcy list, or basically having to restructure themselves, or where they were going to go out of business, and they'd been in the market for quite a long time. The companies, and of course, because of that, then unless the management can turn it around, it is going to be challenging to be keeping the stock price up. Whereas now we're talking about certain companies that actually have got growth stories where their valuations or analyst reports are much higher, and where they're doing a lot of very generative, accretive things to grow their companies. And they're really at the beginning of it. Like you, Greg, you just are like a year old. We're also just coming up to a year old on the stock market. And we have amazing growth plans in terms of what we'd love to achieve. And the reason I want to come to that is there's been some CEOs of companies where those companies also are struggling. And we've got to somehow figure out, like, who's talking about naked shorts because they really do have naked shorts, whereas who's talking about naked shorts because it's a way for them to get interest from retail investors. And everyone's distrusting because of this happening right now. And I've had my own experiences of this too. So I want to come back to that in terms of how we clean that up in an effective way. Greg, obviously, I wanted to have this call because when Frank connected with me and he said, look, Cosmos is on a really good, growing trajectory. And you already have said it yourself with your acquisitions and things you're doing there. I'd love for you to share just your view of the way that you're looking to grow the company while balancing with these issues that you're seeing on the stock market side, and even perhaps like why you chose upstream, which is obviously a decision we made as well.
Okay, first of all, for the communication with our shareholders, we have do the chief communication officer. We have hired a chief communication officer to connect with our shareholders, because our value is our shareholders. That is, for us, is the first priority. I'm focusing in the fundamental, in operation business, because for me is the first priority is to grow the company, to have fundamental. I'm focused also because we are in process for the 2 acquisition there. Of course, all of these naked socket and naked sorts will be a problem for the companies. It's not so easy to understand. That is the reasons that we have hired Intel, Wes Christian, and upstream. It's not so easy. We cannot understand how can we use. For us is the export, is the vertical integrate that we have. We start from raw material until the end product. We export in global. We try to create fundamentals and to grow the company. Minimum debt, growth, company growth, revenue. We have over 200 people that they work for us now, Cosmos has, and we try to focus in this way, of course. About from upstream, I think is can we have, for example, to maximize our the blockchains, the digital dividends, the blockchains innovation, and the maximize the shareholder value from this. That is what I think about the upstream.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Greg. I'm gonna come over to
and the transparency that we have, of course, is I think that is one metric that we go against the naked shorter.
Thank you, Greg. Wes, like one thing for sure is that this is not a binary thing. CEOs against short sellers or retail investors against Wall Street. When we went and were in New York and met up with some like really good investors that were basically wanting to hear our story, what was very, very interesting was that there's good people on Wall Street, there's bad people, right? There's good retail investors, there's people I've had to block. It's like, and we know there's good CEOs, and there's also CEOs that may want the best for their company, but are not necessarily going to be totally honest, even with their investors, right? Like, so in all cases, there's good and bad and shades of gray. What's your view in terms of the movement and how important it is that we find ways to work together with the right people? And what are the ways that we all need to be careful, but not over distrusting with everyone, so we end up being more skeptics and fall apart in this movement going forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So the importance of doing it together and sharing information and figure out what works, what doesn't, is critical to the process, because again, this time we're in is very fluid right now. It changes, if not daily, weekly, or monthly, as it relates to what works, what doesn't, this type of thing. Frank was talking about the RICO, for example. Mark Basile, as you know, Roger, was the one you're talking about, the Dark Pulse Inc. case, Frank, which just got decided as it relates to the defendants filed a motion to dismiss, which was the toxic lenders, and the court denied that motion to dismiss. So essentially, though, you need to understand there's a big difference between using RICO in a securities fraud case. That can't happen because unfortunately, the bad guys, I say, that's my view, lobbied RICO out of the securities fraud litigation back in the late 90s. So while my dear friend Bob Blakey, who incidentally wrote the RICO statute, who's on our team, and his successor, John Floyd, at the Bondurant firm in Georgia, which is on our team, and successfully used RICO with us in the Taser case, in the hyperdynamics case, and then we use it also in the Eagle Tech Communications case. I could go down the list. The reality is you can't use it in a federal claim RICO. What they used it here in that context, Frank, was the collection of an unlawful debt, okay? And if you attempt to collect an unlawful debt, ultimately that can be a predicate act under RICO. And if you do that more than 2 times in a 5-year period and establish check all the other boxes in RICO, I don't want to spend too much time on it, then ultimately you can allow that action to go forward. So the case isn't done. They just beat the motion to dismiss, but that's a good start. And again, this is another new idea to use, okay, in the toxic debenture world. So to answer your question, Roger, so that the sharing of information, all that is critical. Secondly, I think we have to figure out ways to separate in a bucket the operation of your company, the cash that you need to do that, and then what cash you have to set aside in order to pursue this in litigation or in a corporate governance perspective, whether it's doing the dividends or whether it's spinning out a part of it to a private company like MMTLP, or whether it's a share dividend. There's all types of ideas, and I'm not the corporate lawyer, but all those need to be looked at. They need to be pursued actively. Again, this is back to, you got to have a protection helmet on now as a CEO in order to figure out how not to have your company get cheated by these people. And don't forget, it's not short sellers, it's illegal short sellers that we're after. The short selling itself, I don't like it, but short selling itself is legal. So I think it takes both. I will tell you that litigation funders, and in some cases, level that playing field. There are litigation funders, tons of them around the world, in London, in Australia, here, etc. That is also there potentially in a case to level the playing field. And many of those funds are there because ultimately they allow people to find things that are really wrong in society, and they're there to stand up for the little guy and stand up for the ordinary working people, which is who this is hurting. Frank hit it on the top of at the top of the hour. This is causing people to lose homes, file bankruptcy. It's destroying technology. It's destroying jobs. It's doing everything the opposite of what this country stands for and was built on, okay? And it's got to stop.
Thank you, Wes. And I'm going to come over for final words from everyone else as well, because we actually are coming up to the hour. So let me come over to you, John. What would be kind of final thoughts you'd like to leave with everyone who's watching right now?
For all of those that are watching, keep the pressure on. Be boisterous, be belligerent in a professional manner. It helps us, and I know we're being heard. So that's what I would like to say.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Frank.
Just the fact that we appreciate the shareholders and we appreciate everybody that's getting into this fight and staying in it. And I tell you what, I even appreciate the guys with the hateful comments, because I read every one of them, and if there's something in there I can use, or if I'm doing something wrong, I want to know about it. But I can tell you, Roger, that you and I have spoken, and we have a lot more up our sleeves for these guys. So we're not quite done yet.
We're just getting started. All right, and Greg.
We are here. We continue to monitor the situation, and we make all the necessary steps again from this illegal and manipulation. We are here, and we need to protect all of our shareholders, all the people that work for us, all the family that because I have over 200 people that work for the company, and I think we have over 70,000 shareholders. The last check that I have already done. We are here. We are here.
I like that, Greg. And that will be one final thing I'd say as well is that, now that we're, visible in this fight. And so, it's been a, decade-long journey, and we've had shareholders that go back that long. And the fact that everyone who is part of it and still part of it knows that in 10 years' time, we're still going to be part of this too. A year from now, 5 years from now, I have no doubt, right, that everyone who's on this call, right, because you've been in this fight for some time, Wes has been in it for 20 years plus, that we're going to still be in it. And this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. There will be up days, there will be down days. And for everyone to be thinking, look, am I in here for a quick buck? If so, sell at a high, buy at a low. But if you're here for the long term, don't get too stressed if there's a big high day or big low day. Don't let adrenaline take over. This is a long-term fight. But what you do have, I think, from the CEOs who are showing up right now is that commitment to basically being partners going forward, right? Which I think is one of the most important things as well, is how do we actually have trust that we're all in this together? And the more people we can actually bring on board who go, okay, this is actually something I want to support as well, the more we all benefit, right? Because there will be reform one day. The only question is, does it happen in our lifetime, right? I believe it will, because I'm an optimist, but it really takes us all doing this together. I want to say a big thank you to all of you for joining, and everyone who came and listened as well. And of course, we'll catch up on our separate conversations as well. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Roger. Thanks for the time.
We never give up, and we never give up.
We call that the Alamo, the Alamo.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.